The UFC have a new way of trying to decide the outcome of fights before they even happen to benefit the company. They've been doing this more obviously in the Israel Adesanya era, trying to make sure that Israel Adesanya either gets the belt in the first place or manages to keep the belt once he's got it as a champion and make his defenses and then have his super fights. So Israel Adesanya on Theo Von's podcast said that they had offered him a fight with Dricus Du Plessis at UFC 300, and he had said yes, and Dricus Du Plessis had said no, he's not going to be ready for UFC 300. Now, I want to make it very clear. I've got a lot of evidence for this. We're going to play what Israel Adesanya says, just so you can hear him say it, and I'm going to go through some pretty interesting fight dates for you guys in today's video. And we're going to talk about how I believe the UFC is very obviously trying to affect the outcome of fights to benefit them. And by benefit them, I mean have Sean O'Malley and Israel Adesanya win. Okay? Let's play what Israel Adesanya had to say, and I'm going to take you through my evidence afterwards.
That happened. They summoned me. I'm sure this is out there now. Eugene said some stuff. But they summoned me. They summoned me for 300. And I was like, yep, let's roll. But their side didn't want it. So I was like, well, fuck it. I'm just going to keep.
Who, DDP side?
Yeah, they didn't want it.
They didn't want it. They didn't want it at UFC 300. Now, he goes on to talk about the injuries that DDP may have had after the Strickland fight. But that's what I have no doubt in my mind that they did offer Dricus Du Plessis the Israel Adesanya fight. I actually had a moment a couple weeks ago where I was feeling like messaging DDP and saying, don't take it. Like, this is not worth it for you. You just went 5 hard rounds with Sean Strickland. You just became a champion. Do not make a less than 3-month turnaround to fight Israel Adesanya, who's had time to recover, and this is perfect timing for him. Now, Israel Adesanya goes on to say, injuries.
Wow. But, they just fought Strickland, so maybe he had a little bit niggly injuries and stuff. But, hey, we all got little, niggles and whatnot. So, yeah. But I've fought injured for the last how many fights. So that's why I took time off, just to let my body heal. And
he goes talking about the injuries that he's had and how he's fought through injuries before. And there seems to be this general topic of like, why won't Du Plessis fight me while injured? It's like a big thing that we keep hearing whenever we don't get Du Plessis versus Adesanya. Du Plessis gets forced into a situation where he has to accept a fight on less than ideal circumstances. And then Adesanya's like, he doesn't want to fight me injured. What a coward. You know what I mean? It's a very interesting turn of events. So I have no doubt that they were offered this fight for UFC 300. I can see the UFC scrambling. I mean, they were looking to make Leon Edwards Khamzat Chimaev at 170. They were trying to make Leon Edwards Islam Makhachev. Like, they were scrambling for a main event for UFC 300. I have no doubt in my mind they offered Du Plessis this fight. But we're going to go through something today, and I want to show you how the UFC is actually rigging fights in front of all of our faces. Or not rigging them, but doing their best to affect the outcome of fights in a way that benefits their company. Okay? We're going to start here. This is the UFC 297 card of Sean Strickland versus Dricus Du Plessis. This took place on the 21st of January. 5 weeks ago is when this took place. Dricus Du Plessis went 5 hard rounds with Sean Strickland. 5 rounds. Hundreds of punches landed on each other. His face is all swollen up. He's kicking Sean Strickland's legs. He's kicking Sean Strickland's body, catching the elbow of Sean Strickland, catching the forearms of Sean Strickland. And he took some damage. He had a lot of swelling on his face. And he went 5 hard rounds for a championship belt and won the championship belt. Then the UFC wanted him to fight at UFC 300 on the 13th of April. Now, that's less than 3 months away. Okay? That's actually about, when was it? I think it was the 21st of January. Okay, so let's say that was about 11 weeks after Sean Strickland versus Dricus Du Plessis. Weird. But it's only UFC 300, right? And they were desperate for a main event. So that's the only time they've tried to rush a champion on the schedule of a contender in Israel Adesanya. But I want to take you through some other moments. When they first tried to book Dricus Du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya, it was after Dricus Du Plessis fought Robert Whittaker at UFC 290. Now, the UFC had pre-scheduled UFC 293 and already had Israel Adesanya down as the person who's going to be defending his title at UFC 293 in Australia. They then booked the title elimination bout after booking UFC 293, which is on screen right now, in Australia on the 10th of September. On the 10th of September, they had this booked, UFC 293. Then they booked the title elimination bout of Whittaker versus Du Plessis at UFC 290 on the 8th of July. That's 8 weeks before UFC 293. Okay? 8 weeks. So they knew full well that the winner of Whittaker Du Plessis would have to make an 8-week turnaround to fight Israel Adesanya, who's waiting and got all the time in the world to prepare and can start his training camp whenever. They knew that the winner of Whittaker Du Plessis, whoever would have won, would have been fighting Israel Adesanya on 8 weeks' notice. Okay? Du Plessis is injured. He can't take the fight. Gets a ton of backlash from Dana White about not taking the fight. But when Khamzat Chimaev doesn't take the title shot or is broken his hand after the Usman fight, Dana White literally said, we're going to give him some time, get all the scans done, and, when he's ready, we'll be ready for him. So they let Khamzat Chimaev take a bunch of time. But with Dricus Du Plessis, he almost missed his entire title shot by not stepping up on 7.5 weeks' notice after the fight weekend was over of UFC 290, where he just beat Whittaker. So they tried to rush him back in. He didn't take it, which is smart of him. Strickland steps in on short notice, beats the piss out of Adesanya for 5 rounds. Then Du Plessis gets his title shot and ends up beating Sean Strickland in a razor-close decision. But that's not the only time this has been done. It's happened with Stipe after fighting Ngannou, and then all of a sudden it's time to fight DC in 3 months. We've had this situation before. We've also had Aljamain Sterling. He was openly annoyed at how quick of a turnaround the UFC wanted him to do. Aljamain Sterling, frustrated by UFC's quick turnaround title fight plans. Aljamain Sterling hopes that his fight against Sean O'Malley can happen in September or October, rather than UFC's August expectations. The fight ends up going ahead in August at UFC 292. Aljamain Sterling loses by TKO. That was just a couple of pay-per-views after Aljamain Sterling went 5 hard rounds with Henry Cejudo. In May, 3 months later, they want him to fight at UFC 292. He wanted more time off so he could recover from injuries. He didn't get that time off. They almost forced it through that he would be fighting Sean O'Malley. Very interesting, because the one thing that Sean O'Malley was screaming at Aljamain Sterling in their post-fight interview after Aljo beat Henry Cejudo was what? You better be ready to cut weight. Better be ready to cut weight real soon. We're making a turnaround real soon. You best be ready to cut that weight real soon. He said it over and over and over again, knowing that the fight was going to be happening very quickly after Aljamain Sterling just went 5 hard rounds with Cejudo. What ends up happening in the fight? I'm not saying this had anything to do with a quick turnaround, but Aljo doesn't look like himself. He looks awful, and he gets finished by Sean O'Malley. Aljo can't get takedowns, barely shoots a takedown. Can't get takedowns on O'Malley after just getting him against Olympian Henry Cejudo. And doesn't end up winning. He ends up losing. Forced, basically. Not forced, but heavily pressured towards taking a short notice turnaround as champion. So with O'Malley, it was on his schedule as a contender that arguably wasn't the most deserving in the world after the Yan fight, which could have gone either way. But even still, they were on O'Malley's schedule. Make a quick turnaround. Now, you better be ready to cut weight soon. Real soon. That's all O'Malley was saying to him. And then they made Aljo make a quick turnaround, and it is what it is. I also want to bring up some other moments here. UFC Fight Night, Vettori versus Holland. The reason why Vettori got his title fight against Adesanya in a rematch, which he ended up losing, was because he fought Kevin Holland on short notice on the 10th of April. The title fight with Adesanya and Vettori in a rematch took place on the 13th of June. About 8 weeks, maybe 9, after Marvin Vettori beat Kevin Holland on a Fight Night card. Adesanya was already set in stone to be defending his belt on this date. And what fights did they book in the meantime? Whittaker versus Gastelum in April of 2021. And Marvin Vettori versus Kevin Holland in April of 2021. The winner of the Whittaker versus Gastelum fight was supposed to fight Israel Adesanya at UFC 263, forcing them, by baiting them with an opportunity for a title shot and a rematch against Adesanya, to make an 8-week turnaround. Adesanya gets all the time in the world. This is the card you're going to be on, Adesanya. Don't worry, we'll find an opponent for you. And the opponents are expected to make 8-week turnarounds to fight Israel Adesanya. They ain't having Adesanya Romero-like performances. They're getting scrappy over 5 rounds. So it's all good and well, Adesanya can make a quick turnaround. I bet he can. He threw 10 leg kicks against Romero, got punched twice, and didn't do anything else. No wonder he can make a quick turnaround. What I'm saying is, the UFC's got a very obvious way of really brutally trying to pressure certain fighters to live on the schedule of the fighter that they like more. And it's Adesanya in the middleweight division, and it was O'Malley in the bantamweight division. You're the champion? Who cares? You're fighting on this date against this contender. You know what I mean? Adesanya's the champion, O'Malley's the champion. Oh, remember we were supposed to see O'Malley make a quick turnaround before the end of the year? After he beat Aljo. What happened to all of a sudden champions have to turn around 3 months afterwards? They booked the Vera fight in March. In March. Almost as if O'Malley had already fought Vera sooner, the Merab fight would have to happen now. And there'd be no excuses about it. But no, they delay it a little bit. O'Malley fights in March. He can wait a little bit longer. But I just think this is too much of a trend to not notice anymore. Vettori has to fight Adesanya 8 weeks after going 5 rounds with Kevin Holland. If Whittaker would have taken the fight against Gastelum, which he didn't end up doing, by the way, because he ended up turning it down, and that's why Vettori got the title shot, Whittaker would have been forced into a rematch against Adesanya 8 weeks after going 5 hard rounds with Kelvin Gastelum. Why is no one talking about this? The stars of the UFC are like everyone else is just dancing to their tune. Even if they're not a champion, even if they're a contender in O'Malley, while Aljamain Sterling's the champion, everyone's got to play by their schedule. It's so weird to me, and it's just unfair. So I'm glad Dricus turned down the fight at UFC 300. Does it make UFC 300 worse? Yes, it does. But I'm glad because it feels like we're starting to you got to look further into legacy than just what's on a record now. I'm looking at someone's legacy and I'm thinking, that was a questionable decision. Well, that guy was forced to take it 8 weeks later. Well, that guy didn't actually have a training camp because he was expected to fight Adesanya 6 weeks after beating Whittaker at UFC 290. What's going on? Stop taking the bait. You ain't getting paid more to fight stars. Fight on your schedule and actually have fair fights. Adesanya, Du Plessis in June. Have him coach the Ultimate Fighter in the meantime. It's just so weird to me, this whole situation. And I hope that showing you guys the dates has cleared it up. I'm not just defending DDP turning down the fight. I'm saying I've noticed a trend of this over time. But yes, especially Khamzat Chimaev don't have to make an 8-week turnaround. You know? He hurts his hand. Let's let Khamzat Chimaev get his hand checked up and then we'll talk about title fights when he's ready. And there was still a conversation about him getting it over Du Plessis. After Strickland had already beaten Israel Adesanya. There was still a conversation about that. It's just it's very obvious who they want to win these days. And it's just sad. And I hate that that's what they're doing with the company. But they get what they want, I guess. I just think it's so unprofessional. Think about that. UFC 293 in Australia. Big card. They announce it. They do this. Adesanya's going to be on there. Who do we give the title shot? I know. Let's book Whittaker Du Plessis to decide literally about how long before? From the 9th of July to the 10th of September, 8 weeks before? Taking into consideration flights and the day after the event and being in America and then going back to South Africa. You're knocking off days and days and days off of potential training camps. That's unprofessional as fuck. Let's book Adesanya for 10th of September, and I know, let's make these two scrap against each other for a title shot literally 8 weeks before. How did Adesanya get his title shot in the first place? He wasn't given number 15 Anderson Silva, was he? Oh, that's how he got his initial shot at the belt. Oh, interesting. He literally got given number 15 in the world, Anderson Silva, in like the main of what ended up being the main event, because Whitaker ended up pulling out against Gastelum, which then led to the interim belt being made. But his initial title shot was going to be given to him by beating number 15 in the world, Anderson Silva, at the time. I know it's Anderson Silva, but come on. This shit's just unfair now. It really is. And we're just rushing things. Really rushing things. And I hate rushing everything. And quick turnarounds this. And fighting 8 weeks after a 5-round scrap this. And it just puts asterisks next to everyone's wins. No asterisks. Everyone gets a full training camp. Stay reasonably active. This shit annoys me. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle Pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.